depleting troops levels in Iraq could leave the remaining forces more vulnerable. Even the heavily fortified U.S. embassy in Baghdad, among the largest U.S. diplomatic facilities in the world, is potentially at the mercy of rockets and artillery from Iraqi militia forces. Yeah, this is a situation if it like a damn if you do, a damn if you don't. This is very complicated. I did an entire episode with this regarding pulling out troops with an expert. It's a lot more like a lot of people like, oh, pull the troops out, or like, no, we need to stay in, and how you do it and when you do it and what you do before you do it is, guys, it's a lot more complicated than a lot of people realize. Already in September, Pompeo personally threatened to pull all personnel out of the embassy unless the Iraqi government managed to rein in attacks on Americans assigned there. Ooh, go away. But these militia forces, by the way, guys, when they say militia forces in Iraq, they're all Iranian. I mean, they are technically not Iranian citizen, but that's the genius of the Islamic Republic of Iran to be able to claim denied any involvement because it's none of its citizens involved, even though it's all these militia forces, they're tied to Tehran. But these militia forces, it seems, are building strength and reach thanks to support from Iran. Oh, see, I spoke too early. And it's a Revolutionary Guard. Guys, by the way, when people like Kyle Clancy tell you, like, it's just the Sunnis, it's the Sunnis that are the T's, the Sunnis that are doing all these, like, harm to our force, it's bull crap. I mean, when we say the Iran government is a state sponsor of terror, it's because of crap like this, okay? It's because of crap like this, okay? So the Sunnis create a lot more lone wolf and like one-off, just a 1 or 2 years situations like ISIS, but Shia governments like Shia government like Iran, they produce consistent, funded, organized, very well trained, consistent hassle to the whole planet, across the planet, using proxies that are, a lot of people would deny that are tied to Tehran because they're not technically Iranian citizens. Okay, so do not let anybody tell you that the Tehris are mostly Sunni, because they're not. The main ones are actually Shia. Let me see what you guys are talking about. Katie saying Trump is basically the whimsical child in the White House family who got the superpower to make everyone do whatever he wants. So the family needs to keep him in check at all times. So the last 4 years of the U.S. government can be turned into a metaphorical horror movie. Huh. How does Peshmerga... Okay, I don't know, PG, if you understand when I tell you that the questions need to be relevant to what we're talking about today. Sarah, you have some really good comments that I'm missing because you're not tagging Atheist Republic. But you have Sarah saying Kyle is obnoxious and wrong, too far left. He wants us to just bring everyone home and let them sort it out there, as if that will help anybody. Sarah, I really wish I could tag more of your comments. You have some really interesting takes. If you want me to read any of your comments, make sure you tag Atheist Republic, okay? You have your comments are very interesting. No, that's okay. Pompeo hasn't fully waded into the conflict, but the death of more Americans in Iraq could provoke an American response. Yeah, so here's the thing. I think the Iranian government has mastered the art of killing enough American soldiers. Like, they know exactly. Okay, so the Iranians have like tested exactly what the sweet spot for them is. Okay, they're like, if we kill this many American soldiers using non-Iranian citizens, that would not get a response from the United States, right? So in the United States have an understanding. It seems like United States government is like, has made a deal with Iranian government, okay, and like they have signaled to them that you are allowed to kill this many of our troops, this many every year, as long as none of your own Iranian citizen, as long as the Iranian military itself is not involved, as long as the proxies of Iran are involved, and as long as the numbers are below this many, then you will not get a response from us, right? And Iran has played around with that number to know exactly where that level is. Like, okay, we need to kill this many American soldiers this year using our proxies, not our own military, and this will, if we stay below this number, sometimes they experiment, like, can we go a little bit higher? And like, oh no. And sometimes they go a little bit lower, and they're like, we didn't meet our quota this year, right? So they just they have. This is a dance between the U.S. government and the Iranian government, right? But the death of more American, yeah, okay. So if it becomes too much, then the American government is pressured to respond, okay? But again, if the American government is not feeling like responding, so this is what Iran's government does for the U.S. government, okay? Because they're not using any of their own troops directly, so they're giving the United States government the excuse not to retaliate, because they could deny to their own citizens the involvement of Iranian's government, right? They could be like, because if it was Iran's own military doing this, then too many American citizens were like, well, where's the response? They're killing Americans. So Iran is letting the U.S. government get away with not responding by not using their own military directly. Okay. Oh, what do they gain? Okay, what do they gain by killing U.S. soldiers? Many things. First of all, recruitment, signaling strength to their to the anti-American forces around. Look, so for example, okay, so the Iranian government likes to show that they are to the anti-Americans outside of Iranian border. Iran has to act like the hero that they need, the force that they need, the barrier between United States imperialism and their country. All these other Islamic leaders have betrayed them and abandoned them, and Iran is the main force that is stopping them. So they have to brag about how they are crushing the enemy. And also, also testing how much power they have. Also, constant excuses for them, for these militia, for them to be able to fund the militias around outside of their borders to build their own empire, right? So letting a lot of these militia that want Iran's involvement, because Iran's involvement outside of their border makes a lot of these militias have a lot more influence on their own government. Like a lot of, for example, Iraqi government is afraid of a lot of Iranian proxies in the region, and they know that they can't go much against them, right? And the more Iran uses them to carry out missions around the region, the more these proxies are going to be influential. So it's kind of like when you start feeding these proxies, these proxies will constantly demand more, right? And they want Iran. It's kind of like government agencies that when you start feeding them, they just keep growing. And when you feed them more, they constantly want excuses to keep to grow. So they have to find excuses for why they're relevant. It's kind of like a tumor that keeps just growing and growing. It's really hard, right? Again, and also it's very profitable, right? Fear mongering their own citizens for why we need to be outside of these borders, or else they will come home and you all be screwed. Because so we need to, how United States, for example, tell their own citizens we need to fight them there, so we don't fight them at home. Iranian government tries to do that, try to sell that story not just to their own citizens, but acts like a father country to a lot of Shias around the region. They're like, oh, we are like, you belong to us, right? So they kind of like building this kind of high, like wink, wink, not, to the people outside of Iran's border, is that you guys know that you belong to Iran's empire, right? Just like the Turkey is trying to bring back the Ottoman Empire, Iran is trying to bring back the Safavid Empire or the Sassanid Empire, depending on who the audience is, right? And to do that, it needs to fight, it needs to show it that it has capability to say F you to the world's largest superpower. So there's a lot of things here at play. Like, it's a lot of it is also marketing. The idea of Iran being able to kill American soldiers and get away with it and not even get a response, that is such a like a to their audience, to their Shia loyalist audience, that's like such a Chad move. They're like, look at it, like look at us, like we're killing their citizens, and they're not even doing anything. Like, that's how much power we have in this region. We are the hegemony in this area. Anybody that wants to do anything in this area, they have to go through us. So there's so many different, like, that could be like 5 hours of discussions about how different narratives are built around these strategies. Selva Kumar is saying they are trying to bring back the Persian Empire. Yeah, but Selva Kumar, which Persian Empire? That's a very interesting discussion as well, okay? Which Persian Empire are they trying to bring back? Because for Turkey, that's one answer. Which Turkish empire is Turkey trying to bring back? The Ottoman Empire. You know why that's an easy answer for Turkey? Because Turkey doesn't have to choose between nationalism and religion, because the Ottoman Empire was both Islamic and an empire, right? Like, Turkey was great when it was Islamic, okay? But Iran has to choose between two different audiences. It cannot choose, like in Turkey, the nationalists and the Islamists are the same people, okay? In Iran, they are the opposite group of people who hate each other, right? So in Iran, when you say they're trying to bring back the Persian Empire, the question is it the Safavid Empire that they're trying to bring back, or the Sassanid Empire they're trying to bring back? No, Qasim is in Persian Empire. Yes, but which Persian Empire? Okay, are they trying to bring back the Safavid Empire, which was a Shia empire, although a weaker empire? Are they trying to appeal to bringing back a Shia empire like the Safavid Empire? Or they're trying to appeal to the nationalists, to the strength of the pre-Islamic Sassanid Empire, which more people, the nationalists have more of an allegiance. The nationalists in Iran have more of an allegiance and a sense of nostalgia to the Sassanid Empire, not to the Safavid Empire. Okay? So again, different narratives for different people. The Iranian government has to play carefully with three different narratives. Okay, and they notice with the internal audience, playing with the Shia narrative doesn't sell very well. That's why they're more and more, even the religious leader are playing into the nationalist narrative rather than Shia narratives. But they can't do that too much, because they still have a very strong religious core that angers them if they don't play the Shia narratives as well. But more and more they're learning that to the core, internally, they have to lay off Shiism and they have to focus on nationalism. Around the region, they use the Shia narrative, okay, because the Shia heavy areas in the region, the Shia crescent, is exactly where both the Sassanid Empire used to be in power. And those are the exact areas where Iran has the most amount of influence. And they have to sell Shia, a certain brand of Shia Islam, to be able to gain more following over there. But that's the second narrative. The third narrative that they have to sell to have influence around the Islamic world, they cannot play the Shia narrative around because the Shia if they use the Shia narratives around the Islamic world, that's actually more that would be more divisive than a lot of Sunnis will think that Iran is not our ally because Iran is Shia. So when it comes to most of the Islamic world, they don't play the Shia narrative, they play the Palestinian narrative. They constantly remind you that Iran is the only true ally and guardian of the Palestinian, and all the Arab leaders have betrayed the Palestinians and have allied with Israel, and it's only Iran that stands guards for the Palestinian people. So when it comes to the Islamic world, they don't play the Shia narrative, they play the pro-Palestinian narrative. Sarah saying, what do you think Iran will do if Trump did attack them now, knowing he lost and there will be new leadership soon? I think it would be, I have no idea, man. I have to think about that. That would be absolute chaos. I think there's so many targets for Iran to just go at. Like there are, like, do you guys understand that for United States to attack Iran, they have to go all the way over there? But for Iran to attack United States, there's so many very, very, very expensive assets of United States within reach of Iran's missiles right outside Iran's borders. Like Iran doesn't have to travel all the way to United States to cause a lot of damage to United States and its interests. That's how empires fall, because they spread themselves too thin, and your enemies do not have to hit you at the core to cause a lot of damage. This is how asymmetrical warfare is won. You could be a much, much weaker power and yet be able to cause a lot of damage to your enemy, because your enemy is a lot more powerful, but they have spread across the planet in so many places, and all you have to do is inflict a lot of damage to exactly where they are right next to you. Okay, so they have a lot of options. Okay, let me guys, we have to focus on this article. But the death of more Americans. Okay, we already did. NBC's News, Courtney Cube and Carol E. Lee reported that Trump had authorized Soleimani's killing 7 months before it took place, and that it was dependent on whether Iranian-backed aggression led to the Americans' death. It did, and the U.S. military acted. Okay, guys, this decision by Trump, if it was such a bad idea, like, as much as I keep saying that this was a good move by Trump, the way it works is that Trump's like has a lot of bad ideas when it comes to making military decisions, right? And they convince him out of most of them, and the one that randomly ends up being a good one, they just let it stay. So even this one, I don't know if I should give Trump credit for, because Trump is like a random, nonsense generating machine that every once in a while might pop out something that be like, the generals be like, yeah, maybe we could let this one stay, right? So the reason why he came, like, this idea was out there 7 months and people didn't shut it down for all that time, is because the generals decided that, yeah, this could work, right? So even this, I might not give credit to Trump for this, even this one.